It was not the man's brain that was speaking, it was his larynx. The stuff that was coming out of him consisted of words, but it was not speech in the true sense. It was a noise uttered in unconsciousness, like the quacking of a duck, or maybe the braying of a donkey. Yeah, yeah, brays the donkey, or yeah, brays the parrot. Hello, and good evening. Careful, Big Brother's around here somewhere. He might be in here, he might be in there, he might be in here or here. But what I was getting at is I'm continuing our discussion of 1984, and this morning, as of July 31st, 2024, left off discussing ignorance is strength. And by that I mean basically it's within the context of the story, it's an account of what is now forgotten world history by a supposed revolutionary. And it is within the context of this world and general history, it is a generally true and accurate telling. So Winston is reading it to Julia as she falls asleep, and basically where we left off this morning was talking about how the language affects people and how they're affected by the language. We left off with Crime Stop, which, in terms of party members, because if you recall in 1984, the world is basically owned and dominated by three totalitarian regimes who basically eliminated the individual so that a political party could maintain a permanent stasis of power. It's called, killing history. It's called stopping time. It's called, a boot on mankind's face forever is what it's called. And to get there, you had to destroy language to destroy people's ability to think and feel and relate to themselves and one another. And then you also had to destroy and control history so they couldn't recall or know of a time where anything was different. And then you could further educate them into a false history. Because, if memory and history exist in the mind and the mind can be altered, right, what then, right? The whole question in this novel for Winston and anyone who has a shred of humanity left in them, who isn't completely gone on the totalitarian 24/7 war orgy of a impoverished society dominated by total power. Um, Anyways, getting into the language here, the first and simplest stage in the discipline, which can be taught even to young children, is called in Newspeak Crime Stop. Crime Stop means the faculty of stopping short as thought by instinct at the threshold of any dangerous thought. It includes the power of not grasping analogies, of failing to perceive logical errors, of misunderstanding the simplest arguments if they are inimical to Ingsoc, a certain kind of nosiness, a certain kind of paranoia, a certain kind of zealousness and fervor. I'm adding all this in. And also, finally, of being bored or repelled by any train of thought which is capable of leading in a heretical direction, i.e., anything too creative, anything too original, anything too self-derived, therefore not corporation or state-derived, right? Because Big Brother owns everything, so there is nothing outside of Big Brother. Big Brother invented everything, from the iPhone we use, to the gimbal that my camera's on, to that shelf back there, to the lizard and the frog. He also made those paintings, right? He made me, he made you, he made the world. And that's all anyone ever needs to know, right? So basically, it's being a big old dummy. Crime Stop, in short, means protective stupidity, right? The dummy who gets thrown in the concentration camp who was like, but I was so good. Why am I here? It must be a mistake, right? Who Winston meets this guy, right, in the Ministry of Love, aka the Ministry of where they torture you, right? So he meets one of those dummies in the Ministry of Love. So it's protective stupidity, but stupidity is not enough. On the contrary, orthodoxy in the full sense demands that control over one's own mental processes is as complete as that of a contortionist over his body. You have to be a good actor. Oceanic society rests ultimately on the belief that Big Brother is omnipotent and that the party is infallible. But since in reality Big Brother is not omnipotent and the party is not infallible, their need for an unwearying moment-to-moment flexibility in the treatment of facts. The key word here is black-white. It's all caps. Like so many Newspeak words, this word has two mutually contradictory meanings. Applied to an opponent, it means the habit of impudently claiming that black is white, in contradiction of the plain facts. Applied to a party member, it means a loyal willingness to say that black is white when party discipline demands this. But it means also the ability to believe that black is white, and more, to know that black is white, and to forget that one has ever believed the contrary. That this demands a continuous alteration of the past made possible by the system of thought which really embraces all the rest, and which is known in newspeak as doublethink. Excuse me. Um, the alteration of the past is necessary for two reasons, one of which is subsidiary and, so to speak, precautionary. The subsidiary reason is that the party member, like the proletarian, tolerates present-day conditions partly because he has no standards of comparison. He must be cut off from the past, just as he must be cut off from foreign countries, because it is necessary for him to believe that he is better off than his ancestors and that the average level of material comfort is constantly rising. But by far the more important reason for the readjustment of the past is the need to safeguard the infallibility of the party. It is not merely that speeches, statistics, and records of every kind must be constantly brought up to date in order to show that the predictions of the party were in all cases right. It is also that no change in doctrine or in political alignment can ever be admitted, for to change one's mind or even one's policy is a confession of weakness. If, for example, Eurasia or East Asia, again, calling being a dummy, whichever it may be, is the enemy today, then the country must always have been the enemy. And if the facts say otherwise, then the facts must be altered. Thus history is continuously rewritten. This day-to-day falsification of the past, carried out by the Ministry of Truth, is as necessary to the stability of the regime as the work of repression and espionage carried out by the Ministry of Love. The mutability of the past is the central tenet of Ingsoc. Past events, it is argued, have no objective existence, but survive only in written record and in human memories. The past is whatever the records and the memories agree upon. And since the party is in full control of all records and in equally full control of the minds of its members, it follows that the past is whatever the party chooses to make it. It also follows that though the past is alterable, it never has been altered in any specific instance, for when it has been recreated in whatever shape is needed at the moment, then this new version is the past, and no different past can have ever existed. This holds good even when, as often happens, the same event has to be altered out of recognition several times in the course of a year. At all times, the party is in possession of absolute truth, and clearly the absolute can never have been different from what is now. It will be seen that the control of the Big Brother's got an ego problem. All right, he needs to be seen as a god, and he'll kill you if you don't. And it's so there can be no fragility, aka no perceived weakness, because it's otherwise so tyrannical. They cannot stand the thought of any perceived weakness, right? So the idea that they have to be maintain total control over everyone's mind is basically the worst caveman you ever met, or maybe it's, I guess, probably at that stage in humanity's evolution, the worst Homo sapien you've ever met, or whatever kind of in between species there is. Um, right, so it controls the mind. It also follows that the past is alterable. It never has been altered in any specific instance. For when it has been recreated in whatever shape is needed at the moment, then this new version is the past, and no different past can ever. Oh yeah, we read that. This holds good even when, as often happens. Oh yeah, we read that. At all times, the party is in possession of absolute truth, and clearly the absolute can never have been different from what is now. It will be seen that the control of the past depends above all on the training of memory. To make sure that all written records agree with the orthodoxy of the moment is merely a mechanical act, but it is also necessary to remember that events happened in the desired manner. If it is necessary to rearrange one's memories or to tamper with written records, then it is necessary to forget that one has done so. The trick of doing this can be learned like any other mental technique. It is learned by the majority of the party members, and certainly by all who are intelligent as well as orthodox. In old speak, it is called, quite frankly, reality control. In Newspeak, it is called doublethink, though doublethink comprises much else as well. Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. The party's intellectual knows in which direction his memories must be altered. He therefore knows that he is playing tricks with reality. But by the exercise of doublethink, he also satisfies himself that reality is not violated. The process has to be conscious or would not be carried out with sufficient precision, but it also has to be unconscious or it would bring with a feeling of falsity and hence of guilt. Doublethink lies at the very heart of Ingsoc, since the essential act of the party is to use conscious deception while retaining the firmness of purpose that goes with complete honesty, to tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them, to forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and then when it becomes necessary again, to draw it back from oblivion for just as long as it is needed, to deny the existence of objective reality and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies. All this is indispensably necessary. Even in using the word doublethink, it is necessary to exercise doublethink, for by using the word one admits that one is tampering with reality. By a fresh act of doublethink, one erases this knowledge, and so on indefinitely, with the lie always one leap ahead of the truth. Got all that? Right? Clear, simple, easy. Ultimately, it is by means of doublethink that the party has been able, and may, for all we know, continue to be able for thousands of years, to arrest the course of history. All past oligarchies have fallen from power either because they ossified or because they grew soft. Either they became stupid and arrogant, common, failed to adjust themselves to changing circumstances, common, and were overthrown, common, or they became liberal and cowardly, common, made concessions when they should have used force, common, and once again were overthrown. They fell, that is to say, either through consciousness or through unconsciousness. It is the achievement of the party to have produced a system of thought in which both conditions can exist simultaneously, and upon no other intellectual basis could the dominion of the party be made permanent. If one is to rule and to continue ruling, one must be able to dislocate the sense of reality, for the secret of rulership is to combine a belief in one's infallibility with the power to learn from past mistakes. It need hardly be said that the subtlest practitioners of doublethink are those who invented doublethink, and know it is a vast system of mental cheating. In our society, those who have the best knowledge of what is happening are also those who are furthest from seeing the world as it is. In general, the greater the understanding... Whoops, got cut off there. Darn big brother. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. I think I left off somewhere around here. And upon no other intellectual basis could the dominion of the party be made permanent. If one is to rule and to continue ruling, one must be able to dislocate the sense of reality. For the secret of rulership is to combine a belief in one's own infallibility with the power to learn from past mistakes, right? I guess you got to be a megalomaniac. You got to be perfect, like a god, right? How delusional. How small must the ego be? If someone doesn't love you, something doesn't love you, you rage at them and need to destroy them or control them, right? Sounds like a insane man. It need hardly be said that the subtlest practitioners of doublethink are those who invented doublethink, and know that it is a vast system of mental cheating. In our society, those who have the best knowledge of what is happening are also those who are furthest from seeing the world as it is. In general, the greater the understanding, the greater the delusion. The more intelligent, the less sane. One clear illustration of this is the fact that war hysteria increases in intensity as one rises in the social scale. Those whose attitudes toward the war is most nearly rational are the subject peoples of the disputed territory, right? Africa, the Middle East, anywhere like that. To these people, the war is simply a continuous calamity which sweeps to and fro over their bodies like a tidal wave. Which side is winning is a matter of complete indifference to them. They are aware that a change of overlordship means simply that they will be doing the same work as before for new masters who treat them in the same manner as the old masters. The slightly more favored workers, whom we call the proles or proletariat, are only intermittently conscious of the war. When it is necessary, they can be prodded into frenzies of fear and hatred, but when left to themselves, they are capable of forgetting for long periods that the war is happening. It is in the ranks of the party and above all the inner party that the true war enthusiasm is found. World conquest is believed in most firmly by those who know it is to be impossible. This peculiar linking together of opposites, knowledge with ignorance, cynicism with fanaticism, is one of the chief distinguishing marks of oceanic society. The official ideology abounds with contradictions even when there is no practical reason for them, being pathological liars. Thus the party rejects and vilifies every principle for which the socialist movement originally stood, and it chooses to do so in the name of socialism. It preaches a contempt for the working class unexampled for centuries past, and it dresses its members in a uniform which is at one time peculiar to manual workers and was adopted for that reason. It systematically undermines the solidarity of the family, and it calls its leaders by a name which is a direct appeal to the sentiment of family loyalty. Even the names of the four ministries by which we are governed exhibit a sort of impudence in their deliberate reversal of the facts. The ministry of peace concerns itself with war. The ministry of truth with lies, ministry of truth with lies. The ministry of love with torture, and the ministry of plenty with starvation. Right? And there's no ministry of song, no ministry of art, no ministry of laughter. These contradictions are not accidental, nor do they result, or absence, right, very conspicuous, nor do they result from ordinary hypocrisy. They're deliberate exercises in doublethink. For his own, right, and this is where you can see with the proles are cynical. The proles don't understand because they'll often say, oh, they're such liars, or they're stupid. It's like, why do you think they do it? You don't think they do it for a reason? You think it's an accident? You think it's incidental that they all use this language? No. Um, so these contradictions are not accidental. It's intentional doublethink. Only by reconciling contradictions that power can be retained indefinitely, right? And the symbols of power are still power. In no other way could the ancient cycle be broken. If human equality is to be forever averted, if the high, as we have called them, are to keep their places permanently, then the prevailing mental condition must be controlled insanity. Right? And remember, when the context he discusses equality here, he just means that the age of production clearly produced more than enough excess for everyone. Men are still not equal in their abilities and values. However, in terms of material comfort, and here's my theory. My theory is it's a cope for capitalists on one that turns out if you let everyone do their own thing, they'd have no interest in working someone's lame ass job for their lame ass franchise or their lame ass company, right? One, it's an ego check for capitalists. I think the capitalists' biggest issues is that they can't admit that they're not special. That they're just like a modern reiteration on what formerly made civilization better. That they can only imitate it without being the creators, that you could buy and sell something without being the originator or the creator or the artist, right? So to me, that's one side of capitalism. The other side is mainly that, again, um, part of what fuels the larger engine and helps it run so insanely is capitalizing on people's greed and insecurity and fear, right? So long as people are kept unequal, so long as people are deprived, so long despite a world of excess where you can see plenty goes to waste, and intentionally so in the war machine, right? The reason why you don't let everyone have even a living, even when they could easily have it like nothing, right? Like no big deal, is because then it would assuage too much of the primordial caveman emotions that fuels most of the species to date, right? As a laughing stock to a sentient species. That if you actually stop that, then it would all fall apart because the illusions would become all too clear in time. And that's that turns out you can't buy and sell what it is to be a human. Turns out, like, I think the idea is if someone else just has, that means you're less. So if you give someone something, they're more than you now, right? That's the implication. So if a bunch of people got quote unquote free stuff, or excess compensation or minimal compensation even, it's still seen as too much. Their time and value as a human being must be completely robbed of any, it must be completely denied any value, right? Because if you begin to say, wait a minute, turns out labor, like people pointlessly laboring away their lives to spend their time to make a few individuals money, turns out not only is it unnecessary, but it's boring, and most people don't want to do it and aren't excited to do it and aren't impressed by it. And we just go on down the list of how I think this applies. It would deny too many small people the ability to say, hey, look, if I stab a few more people in the back, if I work a little bit harder, if I work a little bit more hours, look how much more I have to prove. Like, the idea is that by other people having more, someone else has less. Do you see how insane and backwards it is? I'm beginning to think I'm going on too long now. I'm going to run out of space on the phone for storage, and I'm also not going to be able to finish this excerpt, but do you see that nuance there? It's really hard to draw out, and it's really hard to pull out, but you can see that within modern society's context, especially in America, where these are the two competing ideologies, socialism and capitalism, on a system that's primarily a corporation state. It's a military, or as a congressman recently put it, a very good congressman, by that I mean a good performer, he called America a insurance company with an army, but actually now he calls it a very broke insurance company with an army. And people will see as the house of cards continues to kind of come apart. Like they're doing a good job of keeping it together there so far, and it's pretty impressive actually. The kind of again, the contortionist act that people have to do to really maintain the insanity and the party lines and the disbelief and the fervor of emotions, and again, the jealousy and hatred that does say, hey, if anyone else has more, that means I'm less. And therefore, if I also have more, I'm more, versus the reality is life is what you are. Your intelligence, your character, your charisma, your personality, that's who you are. You can't buy that. People wish they could buy it. They wish they could buy it and sell it in a pill. If only things were that simple, but it's not. Adaptation, intelligence, learning, in a world that eschews these things, that doesn't want these things, that only wants these things along certain party lines, you know, Anyway, that's my rant on why socialists and capitalists kind of suck. Why I think they're kind of mediocre middle steps in the evolution of our species. And in fact, I think the whole dichotomy of the plebeianism of the socialists with the insanity of the and voraciousness of the capitalists is basically what has been the largest retarding force on the evolution of our species. Yet it's also the same pressure. But I mean, that was kind of the point, right? It's busy work. You see, like all this whole empire here, Oceania, Ingsoc, it's all just cruelty, because when it's all nihilistic, when it all destroys the individual under the illusion of preserving him, even if it's just one person who doesn't even exist, right? Big Brother, right? Some entity, some group, some non-existent group, right? In a society that's actually thoroughly divided, where people exist, leagues apart from each other in private hells, where, they have no reprieve, no intimacy, no love, no joy, no laughter, because all that's suspicious and hateful, um, and not allowed and illegal. Even if are no technically no laws in Oceania, because in a world where everyone's equal, is no need for no laws. So you eject as much people to the outside of the party as possible, and then you're left with your ongoing stratified society. Remember, this whole story is about the three classes who have always existed: the highs, the mids, the lows. And the midwits are the agitators, the one in perpetual power struggle. The ones up top are the ones who get lazy and then get their heads chopped. And then the ones at the bottom are just, the sleepy masses, right? They're just, they run across the river. They don't notice that a bunch of their kin just got carried away by alligators, but it's okay because it doesn't matter, right? The herd's the only thing that matters. So maybe there's a sad wildebeest mother crying somewhere, but most everyone's already moved on with their lives. They didn't know, they didn't care. And that's been warfare in history for a long time standing. It's funny. General Hackworth talks about it in his books. Well, I guess they never made him a general, but he talks about in war, there's always a screaming mother somewhere. That's the consistent thing you hear no matter where you go on the battlefield. And I guess my dad talks about this too. He was a soldier, not an actor, but he's that it's a constant, and that's always happening. And there's not been a day on this rock that hasn't been happening, that some mother somewhere hasn't been screaming for her child that was a casualty of two large armies fighting. So controlled insanity. But there's one question which, until this moment, we have almost ignored. It is, why should human equality be averted? Supposing that I went over mind the capitalist ego, right? They need to be seen as gods. Supporting that the mechanics of the process have been right, and it's got to be hard to be a god when you're not a god. Supposing that the mechanics of the process have been rightly described, what is the motive for this huge, accurately planned effort to freeze history at a particular moment in time? Uh-oh. Here we reach the central secret, as we have seen. The mystique of the party, and above all the inner party, depends upon doublethink. But deeper than this lies the original motive, the never-questioned instinct that first led to the seizure of power and brought doublethink, the thought police, continuous warfare, and all the other necessary paraphernalia into existence afterwards, right? Hail horror, hail terror, hail cruelty. This motive really consists. Winston became aware of silence, as one becomes aware of a new sound. It seemed to him that Julia had been very still for some time past. She was lying on her side, naked from the waist upwards, with her cheek pillowed on her hand and one dark lock tumbling across her eye. Her breast rose and fell slowly and regularly. Julia. No answer. Julia, are you awake? No answer. She was asleep. He shut the book, put it carefully on the floor, lay down, and pulled the coverlet over both of them. He had still, he reflected, not learned the ultimate secret. He understood how, but he did not understand why. Chapter 1, like Chapter 3, had not actually told him anything that he did not know. It did merely systematize the knowledge that he possessed already. But after reading it, he knew better than before that he was not mad. Being in a minority, even a minority of one, did not make you mad. Ooh, he's got it. I think he's got it backwards, huh? What would Big Brother say? There was truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad. Oh, that sounds like crazy person talk, Winston. We're going to have to put you in the ministry of love. We're going to have to give you some love, prescribe you some love. A yellow beam from the sinking sun slanted in through, ooh, see, listen to that rhythm. A yellow beam from the sinking sun slanted in through the window and fell across the pillow. Oh, God, he's such a good prose writer. He shut his eyes. The sun on his face and the girl's smooth body touching his own gave him a strong, sleepy, confident feeling. He was safe. Everything was all right. Oh, and if you recall in this book, and this is the saddest part, right? The human contact, his relationship with Julia, having just a bit of fulfillment and satisfaction in his life, some desires met. It's the happiest and healthiest he is in his entire life, right? He gets a little bit fatter. His worst daily unhealth conditions kind of die down. Like he's just living healthier. He's being healthier. He has something to live for. And when he's at his worst health, can you guess? It's when he's in the ministry of love being tortured, when they're beating him and ripping out his teeth and, tormenting him and shooting him up with drugs and then beating him to an inch of his life and then basically keeping him alive, letting him rest for a few hours and beating him some more. That's definitely probably when he's at his worst, other than when they break him directly. But at least here, he fell asleep murmuring, sanity is not statistical. You hear that? You hear that, modern world? Turns out, sanity and even reality is not statistical. If we're calling sanity something like reality, if those two have any correlate, if that matters at all, sanity is not statistical, not even factual. With the feeling that this remark contained in it a profound wisdom, right? And then he relates feeling back to wisdom, right? And that's bodily, because that's sense, because that is experience, because young people are young and they don't know any better and they are disconnected from the past. Whereas those who've been around often can remember the past, but they have no system of recall, or they're too washed out and eaten up and chewed up by daily survival. That's why the 85% of the proles have never been a problem or an issue to anyone. And the rarities are just rare and they're usually assimilated. And that's happened about as much in history as could be tolerable, at least in this story, until Big Brother said, hey, no more. No more individuals, no more humanity, right? Hail horror, hail torture, hail death, hail genocide, hail destroying everyone and everything. So the party, so an imitation, so an image of humanity in the replacing real humanity, right? The cost was laughter, the cost was love, the cost was the family, the cost was the future, the cost was everything. But they got their cheap imitation, dingy reality, right? Their immortality just cost them everything. Anyway, that's been chapter 3 in Goldstein's book from Orwell's 1984. what is it? Ignorance is strength. I think we'll resume the next conversations. I was thinking not getting to the why of it. Again, those truths that really do break Winston. That'll come later. We'll get to that maybe towards the end of this kind of conversation here before I move on to some other work or some whatever comes next. I have a few things lined up. And again, thank you for your time and your attention. If you have any questions, concerns, leave them below. If it's anything too crazy or concern troll, I'll just delete it or get rid of it because no one needs it or no one cares. As for anyone else, thanks for checking out the channel. Please like, share, subscribe if it suits you. If not, take care. Wish you the best.